Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's live discussion about The Expanse Season 3, Episode 4, Reload. Joining me here once again, Akton Tamko and Darrin from D's Review. Akton, thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure. Always love coming here and talking about The Expanse. Best sci-fi show on TV right now. Not that there's a whole lot of them, but it's as far as straight up space sci-fi. I'm loving it, and can't wait to talk more about this episode 4.
Cool. And Darrin, thanks for joining us once again.
Thanks again. Always a blast to be here with you and Akton here, Mark. Really enjoying the show. I mean, I've enjoyed Expanse the past couple of seasons, and yeah, Akton, you're right. It is one of the rare, great, straight sci-fi shows that's on TV right now. So, yeah, need my space fill. Expanse gives it to me.
Great. So, yeah, let's just go ahead and jump to this episode. Oh, since we lost Akton for a second. But anyway, go ahead and jump into the episode. First, we'll start with you, Darrin. So what did you think of this one?
This was a nice episode. I mean, in some ways, it felt slightly filler-ish because, you know, I'm like, man, I want to get to I.O. I want the big stuff to be happening. But it makes sense why they did. They did a few more, you know, kind of setting things up. I think we had talked last week that we were expecting the big stuff probably to be in 5 and 6. And this might be a little bit more of chess piece positioning. And that's really what it was. Also, it is a great excuse or a great reason to never help anybody who's stranded. It's not good for the Good Samaritan idea out there. But overall, yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. I loved how they really, like I said, finishing sort of setting things up for what I expect to be a pretty stellar next couple of episodes. Akton, how did you think?
Yeah, and I'm kind of along those same lines. I enjoyed the episode. It definitely is like a chess piece moving episode. And actually, after watching this and looking at the preview for next week, I'm not sure we're getting the IOs next week. I had said before that they need to get there by 5, but I don't think we're getting there. It might be 6. But in any case, I love. Anytime Ever Sorella's on the screen, I just love it. And her interactions, now that she's on the Rosinante, her interactions with that crew is just so much fun to watch. And I know we'll get to this later, but I just cracked up laughing when Amos came back and he was like, "Oh, did I miss it?" That was just such a great line. Because they were like, "Oh, I sent a signal to Amos. You're in big trouble now." But they took care of it before he even got back. And he's like, "Did I miss it?" So I had a lot of fun with this episode. Definitely some setup, but it was that's fine. You need your setup episodes. I mean, I had no problem with it being a setup episode. I enjoyed it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. I got a different impression from watching the promo for next week's episode. I thought that it meant that we are going to I.O.
Okay, maybe you're right. I don't know. I hope you're right.
It might be the case what happens at the very end of the episode, and it's just setting it up for episode 6. But, yeah. But, yeah, what you said, Darrin, before about how they goes to show you shouldn't help out people in trouble. I mean, to me, that's kind of a trope I've seen like a billion times before. There's like tons of Star Trek episodes that do this. They pick up people in distress and then they try to take over the ship. And there's a lot of other science fiction shows that I've seen do that before, like Stargate or Farscape or all this stuff. So I found that part of it kind of cliche, but what they actually did with it and tied it into the character stories actually surprised me how much I did like it. So I did actually think this was a really solid episode, and someone in the chat earlier mentioned that it was a really good horror ending, and that one really got me too. But yeah, we'll get to that in all good time because we'll cover this all as we go. So let's go ahead and start getting into the episode. And just to shove it out of the way, just to get this out of the way real quick, let's start with Drummer and the Belters taking over the Nauvoo, because we didn't get much of her in this episode. All we got is basically the opening shot of them going and catching the Nauvoo and getting on board and beginning to retrofit it. And the scene was mainly just like a lot of the cool science stuff that we see in Expanse, where they use the different things to try to slow it down, turn off the engine, stop its trajectory, and they come on board and like, all right, now we're ready. And we got a lot of hero shots of Drummer, but that's about it. It didn't really do much in terms of character or storytelling, but I thought it was a pretty cool shot, and it's sort of establishing Drummer as kind of this hero type. What did you guys think of it?
Well, I don't know. I was bored with it, honestly, but I guess you needed that scene just so you go, hey, remember, Drummer's still on the show. This is still a thing, and she's still going off to her mission. But that whole thing really could have just been summed up in a line of dialogue, and we didn't even really need to see it. But other than to just remind us that that storyline still exists. But otherwise, I didn't. I mean, honestly, they could have just summed it up in one line of dialogue, and that would have been fine with me. But whatever. I mean, we need to see those characters again, I guess.
We needed the space eye candy. That's what we need. We needed all the great exterior shots and the spinning around. And yeah, I mean, they could have handled that up pretty well. It was kind of nice to just, again, take that moment, give sort of Drummer her moment of due. And I've noticed they did this periodically throughout last season also, is where they take those one shots just to let you know, hey, this is still happening. Things are still going on. So, I mean, I kind of saw it as that. And in some ways, it's kind of like the 3-minute service to this other storyline to let us know that that's still happening, and kind of visually keep it with us. And I think it gave us, again, our nice real effects shot for most of the episode. I mean, we had little stuff when they first docked up with the reload ship is what I'm going to keep calling it. But this was, I think, really cool just to see them pirating another ship. I thought was fun.
Space eye candy. That's the perfect way to describe it. It's like, yeah, you have to have your space stuff going on. So that's pretty cool. I'm interested in, real quick before we move on, is just to get you guys, since you guys haven't read the books as I have, where do you expect the storyline might go? Like, why do you think the show is taking the time to show us Drummer taking over the Nauvoo?
Well, for myself, I think that it's just we this is part of a storyline that we played out, and we have to sort of follow our connection to the Belters. Because right now we're really focusing a lot on what the Rossi crew is doing. We're focusing obviously on the big war stuff that's happening over down with the UN. This is, to me, has always been the kind of connection into what the Belters were doing, what their movement is. And so now we've got the big Mormon ship that was used to try and take out, was it Eros before? It's like, where did that go? Was it just floating around? Now we know there are plans for it, so to me, again, it's letting us know that there is more going on here than just the big political stuff between Mars and Earth.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty good assessment. Belinda in the chat says, I really love the Nauvoo stuff. We didn't get the recovery in the books, which is true. So I actually enjoyed it for the same reason, because they kind of just yada this in the books. So I'm actually like that they take the time to show them actually going in and getting the Nauvoo. But anyway, let's move on to the meat of the episode. Let's go on to the Versnate storyline with them picking up. We talked about this. They pick up a group of Martians, and they, while they're on a salvage mission, they find survivors, and shocker, the Martians get upset and try to take over the ship. It felt kind of like a derivative plot, and kind of like maybe they should have been a bit more prepared for this eventuality, as because they are Martians, they wouldn't be too pleased about being on what is, from their perspective, a stolen Martian ship with an Earther captain, especially in the middle of the war with Earth. and Holden and all them saying, "Oh, well, we're not involved in the war." Obviously, I think it's pretty obvious would not be enough to appease them. Now, Alex was smart because he brought a gun with him, but still, I don't know. I think they probably should have taken a bit more precautions. I don't know. What do you guys think of this?
Well, and I don't think Alex, after bringing the gun with him, I mean, he wasn't that smart. He was like, "Oh, I'm just going to hang out and chat with them." I mean, I think he should have left when the rest of them did, leave the Martians pretty much locked up. And yeah, they should have been pretty much prisoners, like they said, like, "Oh, so we're basically prisoners." They should have been, honestly, until they could, know that they could trust them. They should have been prisoners, and Alex should not be hanging out and chatting with them because that started the whole thing. Like, they were able to overcome him pretty easily. So yeah, I don't know that I didn't think that they were overall very smart about it. And I don't understand why, Bobby Draper, I don't know, did she not know that they brought on Martians? Because it seems like she should have been like, "Hey, you guys better be careful because this is how I would react if I were in that situation." So she would have known. So she should have given them some kind of warning, unless maybe she wasn't aware that they brought those guys on. I don't know, because she was kind of off screen.
Well, they did have they had a brief scene, like when they first had the Martians in the sick bay. They had a brief scene in the corridor with Bobby Draper and Holden talking about the Martians, and Holden says something like, "Oh, maybe you should go say hello." He's like,
Right.
Oh, I don't know, because they think I'm traitor or whatever. But
Right.
But to me, I think that was done more for plot purposes, because they wanted to save the meeting of Bobby and the Martians to the end, so it could be this big climactic thing, and that's the main reason why she didn't go and visit them.
Right.
So for plot purposes only. Okay. Well, no. That works. Well, and I think what a lot of this did, and we saw this happening with Avasarala too in the episode, is her kind of pushing Holden. She even talked to Bobby about that. We're going to get him involved. To me, that's a lot of what was happening in this episode, is trying to pull Holden back to be involved in the war. He's trying to play neutral, and he's not part of it, and we're just going to Io. And I mean, they're intricately involved. I mean, they've already made several large moves. They're already connected with Avasarala that's there. And as soon as the Martians came on, they're like, "You're Holden." It took them 2 minutes to suddenly look up and realize who it was that was standing in front of them. So this is not, he can't just sort of drift off on the sidelines and stay out of it. And I think a lot of this episode, between what was him trying to be neutral with the Martians and seeing that that's not working, and then him trying not to get involved with sending the message that Avasarala wanted to eventually to Anna there. To me, this was him having to see that no matter what you do, you are involved. So you've got to be clear with what you do. You've got to take sides, and not necessarily against Mars or Earth, but just understand that position that you are in the midst of this.
Yeah, I do think that's a good point. That seems to be his character arc this season, that he's just kind of wanting to stay out of it. And whenever we get more further with that, with the Avasarala scenes, which we'll get to in a bit. But I just wanted to touch on what Deanna in the chat says maybe Bobby should have been better to babysit. And that's probably a good point. That she would have been a bit more intimidating to keep them in line than Alex was. But I think Alex, in his sort of defense, he was just happy to see fellow Martians, and he was deluded himself to think, "Oh, we're all Martians, so we can chat around and pal around and be all great again." And that seemed to be the attitude he was taking at first.
Yeah, and not very smart, really. And I mean, I understand why he would feel that way, because especially, the whole thing with his wife and all of that he's probably feeling, like he wants a connection with some fellow Martians, and probably not really happening with Bobby just yet. So he's like, "Oh, cool, Martian." So I can understand why he would be that way. But, in retrospect, it probably wasn't the brightest idea.
But I ultimately, even though totally think this whole thing, them trying to take over the ship is a bit derivative. Ultimately, I do like what it does for the character stories, because I like that speech where Bobby Draper does come on board and tries to you have to identify who the enemy is first before you attack them. I think that is really great for her character. It shows where her character is going, and also it's sort of a big step for her that she's willing to stick up for Holden and the others, because in the last episode she herself was like talking about taking over the ship. So it's good that rather than helping them, she actually stuck up for what was right. And it was also really cool seeing the way she just casually strode on. It's like, oh, is there a ruckus here? Should have been like eating an apple or something to make it even more casual. But yeah, I thought,
or drinking a cup of coffee or tea, like you were just there in a bathrobe. Oh, is there something going on here?
Well, that was it. It's also like, I'm going to settle this without even bothering to having to put my coffee down.
Right.
And also, I did notice this was the second time in 2 weeks where the ship is getting them in trouble. I think they mean to do a massive retrofit on the Rossi at some point because it's too Martian. This is the second time. We had Bobby last week when she gets on and looks at the flag's been changed. And then we have the crew this week. They're like, this is a Martian ship. I mean, I love the Rossi. It's awesome, but I think they need to do something to make it more their own and less stolen.
Well, they should have.
Well, they changed the name, Darrin. It changed the name to, which they've totally.
That's all you need.
That solves everything.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter how many. Yeah, I mean, I know you're kidding, but it doesn't matter how many times they change the name because the Martians still see it as the Tachi, and he even his jumpsuit Alex is wearing, he even still said the Tachi on it. But yeah, I think Holden should have, and the others should have preambled it. They should have been able to realize that it's not going to take them long to figure out where they are, and they should have like preambled this and told them outright, "Hey, this is where you are," instead of trying to play it off like, "Oh, blah blah blah." And like it's funny when Amos called Holden captain, the guy like stood to attention, and Holden's like, yeah, don't worry about it. It's like, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I did sort of like that character moment we got with Bobby on the talking the Martians down and showing where her thoughts are and her whole journey about how she was pretty much the same as they were before, just wanting to lash out against the UN, but then realizing that the situation is a lot more complex and she has to find where to direct the anger to.
Yeah, but I also was interesting that the Martians' reaction to her, it didn't seem like that they were really taking in what she was saying. It was more like that one guy was like, dude, she could like, that gun is nothing. Like she could make you eat it. Or whatever it was he said, like within 5 seconds, like this chick is like serious shit. Like we lost. All right. It's over. Like we can't handle her. Like this is a Marine. So it was more like out of fear, it seemed like, of the fact that she's this badass Marine, than it was like she really was getting through to them with what she was saying. I think later on perhaps, but like at least in that initial scene, like I don't think that she was, I think it was more out of like, oh my God, this fucking Marine, and that's what it was. But
and that was a great moment, kind of turnaround. I'm glad that once they made that turn, they settled it quickly, because yeah, as soon as the guy saw who Bobby was, he was like, all right, we're done. We've lost. We gave it a good try, but this isn't going to work out. So it took her a couple more minutes to sort of catch up. But I did like that once Bobby did come in, that was the sign that this was over, which I think, again, Amos had some of the best lines this episode, but when he walks in, he's like, what, I missed it? Just feel that disappointment, like, oh, man.
I also love how they just set it up like Holden sent out the signal. He's like, oh, I sent out to Amos. Once he gets back, you're in big trouble. And you just see Amos walking by and his little signal thing is going off and he doesn't even see it. And so you think Amos is going to be the one to save them, and he comes back and like, oh, I missed it. I just thought that was great.
Yeah.
And also real quick, I wanted to just point out, I did appreciate that Holden won his fight. I mean, he should. He's the captain. He's tough. This is his boat. Whenever they do a big hand-to-hand moment there, you're like, how far are they going to drag this out? And I like the fact that Holden was pretty much able to just sort of sort that out super quick. It reaffirms his position.
Yeah, it looks like he put a sleeper hold on the guy.
Yeah, it was nice. Again, and that was it. He didn't kill him.
Yeah,
he just
like
put him to sleep.
Match from WWE. Put the sleeper hold on.
But yeah, the other thing I was going to say about Draper is that it's because what you guys were saying, when she showed up, they're like, "Oh, we're done," but she didn't press that advantage. She still communicated like with the Martian on a personal level, tried to relate to her rather than just simply coming in and taking the gun. So I think that's why I think it was a really good character moment for her. And the thing with Amos, like that was a great sort of ticking clock, because they knew that they had until Amos got there where he's just going to kill all the Martians and no one would be able to stop him. And they all knew that. So like, guys, you have to put those gun downs before he gets there and you're screwed. And of course they didn't know this because they were just like, you're a mechanic. Mechanic what? What is he going to do? Like, they don't know any of this. I love how Naomi's like, no, trust me.
Yeah, that was pretty great too. But yeah, I do agree with you that was a great character moment for Bobby. It really shows how far she's come since the beginning of season 2 when we first met her on the show. Definitely that she came in and tried to reach out to them rather than just taking the gun like she could have.
Well, and even like you had said, Mark, just reaching back to last episode where she was the one in that exact position, like getting ready to take over the boat. And now already at the end of this point, he's like, look, there's a lot of bad guys out there, but these aren't them. It was, yeah, like you said, it was a nice arc moment, kind of bringing everybody on the Rossi closer together.
Yeah. And to that end, talk about this little scene we get between Holden and Naomi, because Naomi sort of thanks him for saving her life, and he sees like, "Oh, I'm glad you didn't die." And it seems like the two of them are maybe starting to reconnect or get into a path of forgiveness or whatever. But I don't know. That was the sort of the feeling I got. I don't know how you guys think about that.
Yeah, I think it's going to take a little while, but I think they're heading in that direction. I mean, I don't think it's something that will happen overnight. It's not going to happen in an episode or two, but yeah, I do think that they're slowly starting to head in that direction. And I think at some point, when shit really gets real, Holden's just going to be like, you know what? Whatever. You did what you thought was right. Who cares anymore? Like, we're dealing with this situation now. Like, I think eventually we're going to get to that point.
Yeah, it feels like that's sort of what's happening. I mean, each of these, we had the Alex scene last week. We've got now this one with Holden. Amos kind of shutting her down with their little kind of private moment right there about some things can't be fixed. I mean, kind of long-term, all stuff tends to adjust. But that is her, kind of working her way back into connecting with the crew. And I think Holden also seeing that, look, whatever the issues are that we have, we do have to focus on the here and now. And we are the ones that are together. If you're going to be here, then be here. And if you're not, go, and I won't judge you either way.
Yeah, but I did get more of a vibe of them sort of maybe reconnecting a bit more. Because it seemed like Naomi was like pointing out, that's why I love you, because you just always have to save everyone, don't you? And the way she sort of did that teasing, because before they had this, she was very much against with him helping Eva Sorella in the previous scene because of that. Oh, you just have to help everyone. It seems like she's sort of coming to terms with that here. But I think in order for them to really move beyond it, she does need to apologize for what she did. And it still remains to be seen if she's willing to admit that she's wrong, because at the moment she's still stern that she did the right thing.
Yeah, I think it's going to take a little bit for her to get to that point. Probably till the end of the season, but yeah, I agree. She probably is going to have to come to that conclusion and apologize. And maybe once she realizes she's wrong about Eva Sorella, which she is, hopefully, otherwise I'm going to be really upset. and she realizes, oh, hey, like, I guess not everybody is trying to get the protomolecule for themselves. So maybe she'll start to reflect a little bit.
Well, and I think that's what Io is going to do for her bit of the storyline. Again, it's going to be that exposure to, I mean, they've already seen this stuff. They've already seen how bad that it can be. But I think she's trying to tell her story like, oh, it can be controlled. It can be okay. We can use it as a weapon, and not see that, once you get to Io, it's like, there's no way you're going to control this. Just having it is just allowing you to spread in your area. So I think it's going to take that part and seeing the horrors of further on of what else that it does. And even with the best intentions, the smartest people, of how wrong that it can go. I think it's going to take that moment for her to really realize, oh my God, what have I done?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, let's go ahead and talk about Avasarala and the stuff we get with her, where she's watching, the Gillis's speech, which we'll get to in a bit, but and how she's really wanting to send a message out, to send that message of Aaron Wright being a dick, that basically his James Bond villain moment where he confesses everything, wants to get that out there to everyone, but Holden's still not letting him. And I like how that we get the interaction between her and Draper, where Draper talks basically what we've been talking about, how she's not very good with people and she can't convince them to do things. Now Sarah is like, well, I am good with people, so I'm going to talk Holden into doing this because I think he wants to do the right thing. He just needs a little push. And I think she was 100% correct on that. That Holden usually does want to, because if he knew later on that he had the ability, or at least possibility, of stopping this major war and he did nothing, he would regret it. But at the moment he's going through this thing like we talked about earlier, that he's like doubting himself and not wanting to be involved, and Avasarala knew that she needs to break through that, and I think she did. I think she did a great job. And of course, Naomi, you're still like, oh, you shouldn't get involved, whatever, but I think Holden was right to recognize that what Avasarala was saying was true. And they also met both in the middle, because they found a way, they send out the message without the ship getting detected, which was his main worry. So with that problem out of the way, it seemed like it was natural for him to agree and go ahead and do it.
Yeah, and I kind of saw it coming. That I thought he definitely, I thought for sure Avasarala was right, and he definitely would cave. And especially as the conversation was going on, I'm just like, oh, he's going to agree to this by the end of it. It didn't even seem like he was really, it seems like he was resisting just because he felt like he had to, but deep down inside, he already knew that was the right thing to do. I do think Avasarala has been laying it a little thick on the mother stuff. Oh, your mother would be really proud of you, or something. It's like, you don't have to bring up his mother all the time. Like, it just seems like a little bit much. Like, I think she had him without saying that stuff. But that's just a little minor thing.
But Akton, they have to reference the first season. Be like, you remember that in the first season? She had his mother.
Yeah, they're doing that a bit much. Little too much of nod, wink, wink, elbow. Do you remember that? Huh? Yeah, but that's actually not really that big of a deal. Just a little minor, tiny little nitpick that I had. But overall, no, I actually thought it was really great how she was able to convince him, and very natural that he would be convinced.
Well, yeah, because that sort of deals in with what Naomi was telling him in that little scene is you have to go and help people. This is your natural instinct. This being on the sidelines isn't. And, obviously Avasarala sees that, learns that from his visit to his mom. So that's, like you said, she repeatedly says, but even just seeing what it is that he has done, even the attempting to try and stop Eros when nobody else would, he's always willing to try and go out and put himself out there. So it was just, he's caught with trying to keep his crew safe. So, Holden's looking to balance those things. How do I do the right thing and yet not get the people around me that trust me with their lives killed? I'm sure he's still feeling guilt from way back in season 1 even. So, and I did like how they ended up with a little twist of giving another copy, sending the one copy to Anna of the message and then sending another one with the Martians saying, yeah, I know you're going to go to your commander. And then, I want you to notify a UN ship, because at this point, Avasarala sees spreading this out is what's most important. You can't hide from it. You can't deny it. And if you can let both sides know that, look, bad stuff is happening and neither of us want this war, I think it's the one way to kind of open up the eyes of the people, usually at the front lines that are fighting, that know that this is a ridiculous waste of life.
Yeah, that was the next thing I wanted to get into, is what you guys think of Avasarala's specific plan of sending it. She recognized Anna apparently knows who she is, that she's an activist, and that she's very close to Gillis, and that she would totally not be on board with what Aaron Wright is doing. So recognize, and plus that she's not an official politician, so he could get a message to her without it going through all the red tape and more likely to be unnoticed. And on top of that, since they have the Martians on board, they can take advantage of them, send them back to Mars with the message and say, here, take this to your superiors, and also tell Admiral Souther so they can do what the Rosnate can without giving away their position. So I think it's a pretty good compromise. I heard some drawback on this, some suggestions that perhaps they should have just sent it to someone who could broadcast it just to everyone, this whole solar system at large, to make everyone know instantaneously who it is, even if they couldn't do it themselves. That maybe they should have told Anna to do it or something like that. And I don't know. I kind of see their point of like getting it to the key people rather than just putting it up on the news or everything. But I guess there's that dangerous side that it could still be quieted. It could still be quelmed, perhaps, if it's only a few people who know it. But I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I think that it's one, you don't want to necessarily broadcast it all out, because that can create additional complications and blame. And if you can just get the people that can make the decisions to be aware of the truth, it doesn't necessarily need, once it filters out more, I think it complicates things more. Also, the idea of sending it to Anna, I think, was a good one. I did find it interesting that at the end of the episode, it seemed that she'd almost locked herself out from the ability to use it, because she already yelled at the Secretary General, rightfully so, because he's a little puppet guy. And
we'll get there, right. We'll get there.
That's right. But that way, I mean, I think, just in case, again, if she just did it in one direction, then there's a chance that it's going to be lost. At least here it's starting to spread out, and they can always fall back. She still has the original message. She still has a copy of that. So if it seems to get squashed, they always have those other opportunities. But I think, laying the down low a little bit first might be better.
Yeah. And I had no problem with the way that she did it, but I am going to play devil's advocate a little bit, because it is true that she still has a copy of it. But if Aaron Wright were able to squash both attempts to get that message out to Anna and into Souther, if he were somehow able to squash it, he would now be aware that Avasarala has that, which he's not at this time. Of course, he doesn't know where she is, but it would definitely make him really want to get her even more and get that and make sure that doesn't get out. Whereas if she just broadcast it everywhere, then there's nothing he can do. It's out there. It's just out there. But that said, I actually don't have any problem with the way that she did do it. Actually, it makes a lot of sense. She obviously knows who Anna is, and she recognizes that Anna is the person that's kind of could be taking her place as the other foil for Gillis, be the other side for Gillis, opposite of Aaron Wright. So it was very smart of her to choose Anna to send it to, and I thought it was also very smart that, if that doesn't work, I have this other plan to give it to the Martians. So I thought that was overall not a bad plan.
And I think it's pretty interesting that the Martians might find it interesting themselves, because that recording also reveals that the Mars was involved in buying the protomolecule at first, and that's why their ship was destroyed, is because Aaron Wright wanted to retake possession of the protomolecule. So it does say that they're not completely innocent either, but it also shows mostly because Earth is blaming Mars for starting the fighting, but it says definitively, Aaron Wright is the one who started the fighting because he wanted the protomolecule. So I think it's interesting if it might drive Mars to want to actually work with Souther, and because at first, like, oh, they're never going to send this Admiral Souther, he's a UN Marine, but I think if they realize that they're kind of on the same side, I wonder if that might sort of happen.
It depends on who in Mars gets that message. Because if it's a person who's kind of along the same mindset as those people that they picked up, that, whatever, Earth is evil and all this, like it might not work. But if you get like a reasonable person gets a hold of that, then it could work out that way, where they could decide to work with Souther.
I mean, that's possible. You would hope that a commander or captain of a ship would be smart and intelligent enough to recognize it. But then again, you have people like Wynn on the UN side. So you have stupid captains out there too. But yeah, so but you would hope that they would be smart enough to recognize it.
Yeah. Oh, and Mark, I just wanted to point out real quick, because I don't know if we're going to talk about this specifically, but I did notice that Avasarala called Gillis a bobblehead, which you
yes, that's right.
Which you brought up last week. You said, "Oh, she calls him that in the books, and she should call him that in the show." And honestly, if you hadn't said that, I probably wouldn't even notice the line.
Yeah, that was yeah, I definitely noticed that. That was a hint and a nod to the book readers there. Yeah. Because in the book she does it a lot more. In fact, like when she's talking to Aaron Wright and saying, "Oh, the bobblehead," Aaron's like, "I wish you wouldn't really call the leader of our whole nation the bobblehead." That was pretty funny. But I'm glad they mentioned it here. Yes, that was cool. But yeah, just real quick before we move from the Rocinante storyline, we get the brief scene. I didn't really talk about this in my review either, where Prax is on the Martian ship and he sees like this dead Martian lying on the equipment. He just casually puts him aside. It's like, "Here you go, here's the equipment." Amos is just like, he's shocked. But now Amos himself, it seems like something he would do, but I guess he was surprised that someone like Prax would do that. And maybe it's showing how dead inside, or how his character is turning a bit.
Yeah, I had caught that also, and thought that was a really interesting moment, because you wouldn't expect the way that Prax has conducted himself. I would have expected more of an emotional, compassionate response. But I'm wondering if his time on the Rossi and everything he's been exposed to has made him a little bit more clinical in that sense. He's hanging out with Amos a whole lot. Maybe that's rubbing off on him a little bit. But yeah, I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. I actually saw that as kind of a little link that we'll note, and then we'll see in another episode or two as he does something a little bit more like that, a little bit something less compassionate than we would expect from him. We can see that there's some sort of line that's happening as he's reacting to this whole May proto-molecule situation. So yeah, to me that was just a little hint, a little drop as something that's going to develop a little bit later on.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that, Akton?
No, I actually didn't notice that.
Oh, you didn't?
I didn't catch that. So this is the first I'm actually hearing of it. So I don't know, but that is interesting about his character.
Yeah, cool. And Belinda in the chat points out that Alex called Bobby Gunny, which I thought was a nice little touch. Like a lot of people, all of her colleagues were calling her Gunny before. So it's interesting that Alex called her that as well. And she called Alex something that was kind of like the equivalent for pilot, but I can't remember what it was. I don't know if you guys remember what it was that she called him.
Oh, no, I don't. No, it's going to have to rack my brain for that.
Yeah.
No, I don't either.
Flyboy, I don't know, something like that. But anyway, we can just go ahead and move on to a different storyline. Then let's go ahead and talk about Secretary General Gillis Earth with his big speech. God damn, Aaron Wright is so swarmy. He is so sleazy, and I love it. I love the way they played this. Like before the speech, he's like, "Oh, you should go sit up front because and witness your work." And I'm like, right down, like, this fucker is up to something. So I wasn't surprised. Like the speech starts out like good with, you could tell Anna wrote it and she's, wording along with it. And it sounds like, oh, the people of the race need to get together. And then all of a sudden he starts, but Mars don't want to get together. So we need to take control of them. And I think that was, I don't know if maybe it was a bit over the top. I mean, if you look at current events, maybe you think, well, it's not so much over the top, but I would say it's almost like a Nazi-like speech. It's like, we need to conquer them, we need to heal them and put them down, blah blah blah. I
don't know it's limited to the Nazis. Honestly, yeah, I don't want to get political here, but just look at current events. I think you can see stuff like that all over the place. So I didn't. I thought it actually seemed pretty normal to me, honestly. It was interesting. I thought they played it well, where you can see where it's. I mean, by Anna's reaction, like where her speech ends and where Aaron Wright's speech begins. I mean, you can see anyway, just because he's turned into, we gotta get the Martians. But I mean, I love watching her reaction, her facial reactions to the speech. As you said in the beginning, she's kind of mouthing along to it, and you can tell that it's hers. And then it's Aaron Wright's, and she's just horrified. So I thought that Elizabeth Mitchell played that really well with the facial expressions. And Aaron Wright, that guy's a bastard. Like, what a slimy bastard. And he was just hoarding it over her. Like just a complete arrogant bastard. Like, oh, I want that guy to really get his. I just really want him.
And talking about the facial expressions, I love Aaron Wright's. Like, he takes pure devilish delight when he sees that Anna's upset of this. He's like, that was played really well as well.
Well, even at the end when she has her big blow up with the Secretary General, like, what did you do? And they have that final shot of Aaron Wright who's just like, oh yeah, that just happened. Let me get back to my drinky poo. He's like, my job was done. Excellent. And I mean, and that's the one thing about Aaron Wright that's almost too over the top. Is it's like every time you see him, you're like, okay, he's doing something messed up. He is conniving something. Every time you can like see his manipulations going through with that big grin on his face. So it's, what Cardinal Doomsday in the chat referred to as Babylon 5. The speech was so Babylon 5 evil. And it's very true. And then we have Aaron Wright, just sort of the little background, like, yes, excellent. Everything is going on.
But I don't think that part of it was over the top, though. It was just had that hint of it, but not in a cheesy or bad way.
No. That's what I'm saying. Not so much of that. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's just that every time I see him now, it's just like there's not even there's not like Aaron Wright going to have dinner. Aaron Wright's picking up a drink. No, it's like every time you see him, he is like manipulating war in one form or another.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and get into that scene where Anna like tears the Secretary General apart. And I think he was not expecting that. I think he was expecting her to be upset, but he wasn't expecting her to be like, no, I thought there was a shred of decency left in you, and there isn't. So screw you, I'm out. And then her calling him Aaron Wright's puppet, which he is, I think maybe all this hit a bit home to Gillis. And I kind of interpreted like Aaron Wright at the end of the scene when Aaron Wright didn't say anything. I kind of interpret that as he knew he couldn't say anything to appease Gillis, and anything he said would just make him come off as more swimey, which is why he just said nothing. Because I think Gillis actually took to heart, was affected by Anna yelling at him. I don't know what you guys think of that.
Well, I would certainly hope so. And everything that I felt that everything she said he deserved. I mean, You know, and I can especially understand her saying that, you know, given her state of mind. But, and I also, I absolutely loved how she shut Aaron right down when he started talking. She was like, "You don't get to talk," or whatever. Like that was pretty nice.
That was really cool.
Yeah, yeah. I actually really loved that scene. I love seeing her blow up like that because I felt Gillis deserved it, and I do think he's going to take it to heart, and I think it's going to make it a little easier for her to maybe show him a certain video. But I also don't think it's going to be. I can't see it just being, "Oh, look, here's the video. All right, okay, Aaron Wright, you're going to jail now." Like, I think it's going to be a little more complicated than that. But I do think that we're setting up over the long run for him to listen to her, because I think that he really did take to heart what she said.
Yeah. Oh, earlier in the chat, I think it was Belinda that suggested that perhaps Anna would try to redeem Aaron, right? Because she's like, you know, religious type that sees the good in people. But I personally think that she's so fed up with him at the moment that she has no interest in trying to redeem him, and just wants to quash him, sees him as the swarmy evil voice in Gillis's ear, because that's what he is.
Yeah, I think the only redemption she thinks that she might be able to appeal would be to the Secretary General, that he could potentially turn, that he might still have some good in him. And she was just saying in her speech, "I thought you had this, but you don't." Which, yeah, I mean, like I was inferring before, the fact that just after that, that's when she got the video. In some ways, it's like it confirms what she is personally thinking. But in some ways, it's put her in a position to maybe be more difficult to initially get that message across. I mean, I don't know. She may just call up and be like, "Hey, come here, I found something," and it'll work out. But I don't think for the arc of this show that would really serve a proper purpose. But that's why I think it's interesting that she has this and the Martians do, and then it might come up through Suther there. You know, it's sort of a backup, because like what Akton, what you would sort of refer to, if it gets out there, yeah, he can't deny it. But I think in some ways, the more public it is, the more likely that he can claim it as manufactured to disrupt trust or something like that. You know, I think the more that this moves without his awareness of it up the channels, I think the more effective it would be when it eventually comes out.
Yeah, and Belinda brings up a good point. She says that she might blackmail Aaron Wright with the recording out of office. That's certainly a possibility. I can see that happening. But I would say if she did do that, that would be the wrong move. Because Aaron Wright's the kind of deceivious, smart politician who would be able to find a way around that. I think that her best move would be to go directly to Gillis, because of her relationship with him, and show him that. I kind of think if she does go to Aaron Wright first, and that's the show postponing things a bit, pushing things off.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it would be along the same lines of, sorry, Cardinal Doomsday, but I have to bring up Game of Thrones, but Ned Stark going directly to Cersei and telling her what he knows. Like, that was the wrong move, and he ended up getting his head chopped off. Spoilers for season 1 of Game of Thrones, sorry, but it came out years ago. Anyways, like, if she does that too, and she very well might, but it would be the wrong move. Absolutely, it would just not. You got to keep it from him. You can't tell him that you have that. If she does, it's not going to turn out well for her. And she might, because like you said, it'll be a way to kind of drag out the plot a little bit. Like, so it can't just be like she hands it to Gillis and he goes, "Oh, Aaron Wright, okay, he's evil. Well, you're under arrest." You know, it can't. It's not gonna be that simple. So there's got to be something that makes this a little more, you know, adds a little more tension to it. So it could possibly be that. I don't know, but it would be the wrong move for her to do that.
Yeah, and I think I was saying in my review, I wouldn't count Aaron Wright out just yet. Like even if, and it does go directly to Gillis, I think he's still trying to. He's very deceptive. He try to find some way and be like, "Oh, this is a fake done by Avasarala, who's the real planner, or whatever."
I'm sorry, Mark. Did you say it's a fake? Sorry,
I did indeed. Did indeed. Cool. So yeah. So then after that, we get the scene of Anna. Like I love I love the way this is, because when she's like, when she tells Gillis she's done, she's being sincere. Like she just wants out of there. She says it was a mistake for her to come back. And we see her talking to her wife and saying she's really pissed. And Liv is like, I just need to get home. And I love that scene because I knew the whole time that she was talking to her wife that as soon as she got off that call, she would get that message from Avasarala with the recording of Aaron Wright. And it's kind of like, shit, I can't leave now because I have this to deal with.
Yeah, that was pretty predictable. That as soon as she hung up that phone call, that call was coming in from Avasarala, and she was going to get that message. Like, oh shit, because that's pretty. I don't know. I don't want to see cliche, but it's something that you've seen a lot, where it's like, oh yeah, I'm leaving now. Okay, it's all over. I'm coming home, and then all of a sudden, like, boom, the thing happens that keeps them there. Now, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, that it was predictable. I mean, I didn't have any problem with it, but it was actually a pretty cool scene to see when that Aaron Wright's message came in, and to see the reaction she had. It's like, holy shit. So I'm really actually looking forward to seeing what she does decide to do with that information.
Yeah. So you're saying every time she tries to crawl out, they're pulling her back in. Yeah, I get. I see exactly where you're going with that. But yeah, it was. I mean, I don't know. It was kind of tropish, even the whole fall apart with the wife and having the emotional support and having to go home. It does work for her little arc. And Acton, you're right. Her face, her emotional responses that she can read on her face, I think, are really. She does an excellent job of reaction shots. I think of doing that internal emotional reaction. So that was really cool. But yeah, it was, it just, that's the next shot that had to happen. That's just sort of what it felt like to me.
Yeah. So, yeah. I think that worked out pretty well. So Darrin, do you have any thoughts or predictions on where this might go? What Anna might do with the message that she got?
Well, yeah, I mean, my guess is, if they're going to pull this out a little bit more, it's either going to be she's going to have difficulties trying to contact Gillis, after that whole little, I don't want to sue you, you're a puppet, or Gillis could hear that, but then it's Gillis that could end up fumbling the ball and exposing that to Aaron Wright, who can just claim, oh, this is a false flag. This is something set up by Avasarala. Of course, she's trying to scheme her way out of things and to put the blame onto me when she's the one that's been involved. So that's sort of where I'm expecting this to go. I think this tape is gonna get stretched out if it's shown to Gillis at all. I do think we'll probably hit Io, and we're going to have the bigger exposure. I did like it. I know we didn't really get into Mal's reaction with the proto molecule. I didn't know if that was where you wanted to head on.
No,
next.
Yeah, that's where we're going next.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. But yeah, that's in regards to the message and stuff. I'm thinking that it's going to get caught up in stuff, and that I'm hoping that we'll have a good Martian general who ends up sending that to Admiral Sother, and then we can get some movement happening on the front there, because we also got to get Kochiar out of that. And I think if Sother can get a hold of this tape, that would work to help make that happen.
Cool. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get into the last storyline here. Let's talk about Jules Pierre Mal on the planet, like sort of wrapping things up, and you can tell Strickland's very unhappy with ending the project, and he's gone behind Jules Pierre Mal's back and continuing the experiments with the little boy Katoa. Now, the one thing I was wondering is, like, we get the scene when Jules Pierre Brown is talking to May. May's throwing a hissy fit. She's like, I want to see Katoa where, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, he tries to calm her down, and then she drags him out into the hallway. Did anyone else think that Strickland was going to kill Jules Pierre Mal in that hallway or knock him out or something? I kept expecting that, like, he was now he's out in the open. He's going to sneak up behind him or something like that.
There was totally a moment where you thought that was going to happen. I mean, come on, he was quiet. He was out there. It was in the dark. It was like, oh, someone's going to jump. Which was actually why I was kind of glad when he called up and ordered his guards to grab Strickland and bring him out. You could see how much Mao still had control of the station. To me, that really reoriented the concern of how much Strickland was going to be able to try and get away with. Here, we just see that he's sort of playing off in the corner in the one little locked room, even apologetic. I'm sorry, I couldn't stop. It was important. There were things. But yeah, I think that scene was really helpful to show. One, we were concerned whether or not Mao was going to get taken out and just have it be settled there. But then also showing that Mao, actually has a lot more control. The people there are listening to him more than Strickland. So I thought that was kind of a nice little back and forth just in those few moments.
Yeah, and I'll actually admit that I didn't think that. it didn't occur. I didn't think that he was gonna sneak up behind him or anything, or try to kill him or anything. But I did say last week that I thought that that's what was going to happen, that he was at least going to knock him out and tie him up or something like that. But as it turns out on this show, there really is no redemption for any of the bad guys. Anytime we had this with Aaron, with Aaron Wright last year, where they tried to trick us into thinking like he's seen the error of his ways, but then it turns out he's actually way more evil than we ever thought he was. So, and then with Jules Pierre's Mal, it's just like, oh yeah, these little kids, no, we can't do this. And like, oh, he's contacting all the rest of the protomolecule. Well, we have to continue the experiments now. And you're like, oh, well, okay, there actually is no redemption for any bad guys on this show. They're just bad guys. But I didn't actually see that coming. I did expect that it was going to be something more along the lines of Strickland betraying him in some way, if not killing him, then tying him up or going over his head to Aaron Wright or something like that. So I actually didn't see that coming, the way that it ended up happening.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like we're giving Strickland too much credit because he's kind of like pathetic, just going behind his back and continuing experiments. And when he got caught, the goon just dragged him there. And I said in my review that he was acting like a kid with his hand caught in a cookie jar. He's like, oh, no, I'm sorry, but I needed to do it. So he seemed like really pathetic at the moment. Like he's not even capable of trying to go after Mal. He just couldn't stop himself from doing the experiments. But yeah, so let's get into this scene, which I love the way it played out, because when they go in, you see May act all shocked, and they all act shocked, and you see shots of Katoa glowing blue. So I figured anyway that she was all shocked and horrified because Katoa was turned into a protomolecule thingy. But then they cut to a wide shot, and you see this disassembled body with like all the organs like neatly laid out. That I think was really freaking effectively creepy. I think it was a really good horror. That shocked me. I did not expect to see that.
And that also speaks to how just like actually evil Jules Pierre's Mal is, that there's this body strewn out all over the floor, and he's like, oh my god, he's contacting the protomolecule, we have to keep these experiments going, like completely ignoring this disgusting, but like what kind of human being can just see that and just ignore it and just be like, oh well, we have to continue the protomolecule experiments now? Like, oh my god, dude, like, man, that guy has no soul. You thought he did with the kids last week, but to be able to look at that and just not even mention it, just ignore it, not even, he's not even acknowledging that there are body parts that are very neatly put together on the floor. And I mean, oh my God. Yeah, just a very powerful scene.
Oh yeah, super gross, super cool. And yeah, again, who was that? Another nurse, a doctor? We don't know. We can guess from the row, but nobody was like Jean-Paul, Fred, no, Betty. You know, we don't have any of that. It's just, oh my god, he's in contact with everyone. He's a radio. No, we definitely got to keep him. I mean, and in some ways, while that is really dark, you can see that there is now an additional layer that is intriguing now. Before, in some ways, maybe the horror aspect of it was putting him off, that it couldn't be controlled. But now he's like, wow, we might have a translator for the protomolecule now, or we can figure out whatever the main, base on Venus is doing, or however, he's thinking of that of larger connection can be used. But it's, he found a purpose for this connection. We can see that sort of intriguing, attaching to his little curious mind. But yeah, the fact that he can completely disregard even referencing the strewn out pieces of body laid out neatly in organized fashion before him was yeah. Oh yeah, like you said, there is no there's no turning back. What's your bad guy on this show? You're pretty much a bad guy.
But I will say in Mal's defense that I do think he's coming at it kind of from the perspective that the protomolecule is the biggest threat that humanity ever faces, and he's not necessarily wrong about that. And he sees this as the opportunity to take control of that, not necessarily. So I think his intentions are kind of good here. Actually, it's not necessarily, oh, I'm going to be able to make a lot of money now. It's more like, oh, now we have a way to protect ourselves from this growing threat. And I think that's why he saw the value and continuing the experiment. So at least that's the take I got out of it. Of course, it is totally true that he was able to completely ignore the reptile body right in front of him. But so I definitely think that he is an evil dude and definitely a bad guy. But I think his intentions aren't necessarily, he's an understandable villain. That's how I'll put it.
He may be an evil dude, but he may be our evil dude. We just haven't figured that out yet. We just can't be sure. Yes, using horrible things in order to stave off a larger threat. Yeah, and I agree with you. I do think that's what grabbed him, was that potential, the potential of what this communication could do for them from a defense standpoint. But it I don't know. I guess he maybe had a moment of horror walking in, but that passed quickly once he found a reason to ignore it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, regardless of what his intentions are, if you're able to just look past that, there's something wrong with you. I don't care what his intentions are. There's something wrong with that dude.
I had to point out in the chat, I love this. Belinda said, Qatar needs a new nurse. I nominate Aaron Wright. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, in the scene where he was just like, oh, I'm sorry, I had to do it, or whatever it was he said, it was so creepy. That was like, I mean, I would say definitely the creepiest scene on this show for sure, but I mean, it was so creepy.
Yeah, I mean, and they kind of foreshadowed this too, because it's almost like Katoa, the boy himself, is not really aware of why he's doing it. You can tell he was really confused. It's like, Dr. Strickland, what's going on? My hands just did this. And it's almost like he's like a dual personality, because you hear him talk and then you hear the like protomolecule talking, where it's like analyzing blah blah blah, and it's kind of doing the same thing it did with the ship when Venus were taking apart, where it's taking the body apart and seeing how it works.
Yeah, and I think it's probably only a matter of time before the Katoa part is gone and it's just protomolecule.
Yeah, Katoa's going bye-bye. He's transitioning out. He's sold the property. He's moving out. Escrow is closing, and he's going to be done. But yeah, and I also love how sort of robotic the protomolecule creature is. Almost computer-like. In its terminology and its observation and everything, very, very logical, very straightforward, and then having that bit of humanity for Katoa just sort of pop out of there for just that brief moment before getting repressed. Yeah, you can see that type of change.
Yeah, and it is essentially a program. So yeah, that does make a lot of sense. But I don't know, this episode might not have been as clear on it, but I kind of do get the impression that the Strickland, and I think we kind of mentioned this earlier, that Strickland and Mal do have other protomolecule hybrids there ready to go, like in the storage from before. I kind of, because I almost get the impression with the things with Guitar, they're almost acting like this is the first time they did this, which obviously it isn't because we saw the monsters in the previous season. But I think maybe it's the first time they did it with these children with that condition where Strickland thinks the condition will allow them to control the protomolecule. So it's having a different effect than it did with the other hybrids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was never really clear on that, where the other hybrids came from, if those were previous children or if that was something else entirely, if those were other people and these are the first children with that particular disorder that they're doing this on. I wasn't sure. I kind of thought that those also might have been children, but I wasn't really clear on that.
Yeah, they kind of had this scene in season 2 where they found like a child turned into a thing. So I think that was implying that, but I think from this episode and these episodes, I get the impression this is the first time they're doing it to the children with the condition, with the medical condition that Strickland thinks will allow them to control the protomolecule.
Yeah, because they did mention that they were only trying to focus on one child at a time so they could regulate and measure things and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think this is kind of the first time that they've breached this level with these particular kids. And the hope being, yeah, exactly, that because of this genetic difference that these kids have, that they were going to be able to exhibit more control over them. I guess the other ones probably seem like you just sort of release them and they're like just wild attack dogs.
And I think May's going to be totally uncooperative now after seeing what happened to Katoa. It's probably pretty traumatizing.
She's not going to look forward to her next injection. No.
Yeah.
You would think not. I mean, I wonder how Strickland and Mal are going to try to like talk her into it. Like they always seem to control her and are able to talk her into anything. But so I'm wondering if they're going to be able. I mean, she's definitely going to freak out, but I'm wondering if they're going to be able to like talk her out of this. Like, oh no, don't worry about that. And she's going to be, if that's going to work. It
could potentially put her in danger because Strickland and Mal might try to isolate her from the others and not let, so the others don't get freaked out. So maybe they might try to silence her. So that could be a risk for her.
They just got a promise that she can jump and climb the way Katoa could. She was very excited about that.
Yeah. Well, they might just also just strap her down and just force all the injections on her, and just she might be the next one that they're going to work on. And they would isolate her, and they're not going to play nice with her anymore. Just strapping her down, they're just going to inject the hell out of her. So, Parks better get there quickly. His daughter's in trouble.
Yeah, and I like that. I like that extra element to it that we know as the viewer that time is running out. So, yeah, I think that's pretty good. Cool. So we can go ahead and wrap up our discussion here. Thank you guys so much for joining. Thanks everyone in the chat who joined. Just any sort of last thoughts on where we think the next episode is going to go?
Hopefully, Io. That's really again, they've done all this setup. I mean, we're going to hit 5 there. We're going almost into the back half of the season now. So,
or the middle of the season.
Well, it's the hump episode, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, I like the setup. I was good with these little, movement and setting up the chess pieces. Now, I just want a little bit more of the action kind of stuff moving forward, because we know it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. So I'd like to start kind of moving, and hopefully we are going to see a little bit more of what's going on with the belt and the ship. Nexium, and what they're going to do with that, because they've got nukes, they got protomolecule. Are they going to use that as a mobile base in order to explore the protomolecule? Do they have some weaponizing platform they're doing with that? I'm sort of curious what their whole plans are with that giant ship.
Yeah, I think they're definitely. I get the impression that they're really moving things along. That things are coming to a head. That they're not able to. They're not going to be able to push things back anymore. That things are going to go down. And I've kind of heard that this next episode might be epic. So yeah, that's what I'm really hoping for.
So how many episodes are there this season? Is there 10?
13.
13. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we're not even halfway yet.
Yeah, not even halfway.
Yeah.
Okay. No. I thought we were about to hit the back. So no, we're good.
Yeah,
we still got time.
Yeah.
But if you recall, last season's about, what was that, 5 that was the epic episode?
Yeah, 5 was the epic episode. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe this season as well. We'll get a pretty epic episode. And I'm actually so focused on like them getting the IO. I'm like not even thinking of what's going to happen beyond that, because IO is going to happen pretty soon here. And there's going to be a lot of stuff that happens after that this season. So I'm not even like really thinking about what's going to happen after that. I'm just really focused on, I just want to see the shit hit the fan when all these characters arrive at IO.
I think it's gonna happen. I think it's gonna happen, but we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, yeah, Akton, Darrin, thank you guys so much. Thanks to everyone joining us in the chat. Belinda, Colonel Doomsday, everyone there. It's good to see you. And anyone watching this in archives, thank you so much. Anyway, we'll wrap it up where people can find you and what you guys are up to. Darrin, we'll start with you.
Hi, Darrin Jakes. You can catch me over on D's Reviews, doing Westworld. Season 2, we're doing the last couple episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Really excited about that. Almost quit Fear the Walking Dead, but I think I'm going to go back and just do short reviews for that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No spoilers. I'm not watching.
No, I'm not spoiling anything. Just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Legion, which is just amazing. If you haven't seen that, you should totally check it out. And that's it.
All right, and of course, I'm Akton Tamko. I'm Mark's brother, and you can find me on Akton Tamko's channel. And I was on a bit of hiatus for a while, but I'm back. I've got some stuff going on. You should check out my Game of Thrones season 8 predictions. I'm also covering Westworld. I'm really starting to get into Westworld. I actually did a full review for Westworld for episode 2, which you should check out. It's full of splendor for anyone who's watched the episode. You know what I'm talking about. Mark doesn't know what but you've never seen anything so full of splendor. But just definitely check out my channel. I did a Lost in Space review recently as well, and I got more stuff coming, so keep an eye on that. And I also look forward to being back here with Mark next week to talk more Expanse.
Great. And if you're finding my channel for the first time, Mark, my channel is Enchantment of Eternity. I do reviews of the Expanse every single week, as well as these great live discussions every week. Aim to do also cover other shows like Star Trek, which at the moment I'm doing my movie reviews where I cover every single Star Trek movie. Next week or this week, I'll be crying havoc and let slip the dogs of war. Looking forward to actually covering a good movie this week. And I also do all sorts of other Star Trek videos, and I'm still pushing back my Game of Thrones stuff. I probably won't get into that till July, but I'll get there eventually. I know everyone's been wanting me to get back into Game of Thrones. I need a little break. I think July is looking at the moment. But anyway, you can check out my channel for Expanse Star Trek stuff. And, my Babylon 5 Season 3 review. I've been working hard on that. Actually going to try to upload that tonight. So keep an eye out for that. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for joining, and we will see you guys later.